The Battle of Ontario goes Toronto's way once again, but there are a ton of angles, including some fantasy takes, to be had on today's show. And let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, my hockey heads. Welcome back inside the lab to your number one daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL news, and nightly betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Steele and Flip. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down and making us your first listen every single day, even throughout the postseason. Steele and I are here 5 days a week to make sure that you have your finger on the pulse for the upcoming season. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into an Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Steele, we're going to get to the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights. Some takes there, some takeaways. The Knights going up against the Edmonton Oilers, who once again dismantle the LA Kings, by the way. You might owe me a couple of bucks for that one. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And, of course, big-time bets. Jets and Blues. Big-time tilt tonight. We've got some late-night bets coming off the reel. But Battle of Ontario, my friend. Fantasy takes. Players that stood out. A lot of things that I know you want to say about both teams. Over to you. We got that dub, baby.
Oh, we got that dub. You and I predicted 6 games. It landed on 6, and the Leafs move on to the Florida Panthers. I was so happy after the game. Obviously a little nerve-wracking when Perron tied it up 2-2 apiece, 7 minutes left in the third, but there was no doubt that the big guns and some depth scoring helped out in game 6 and really came through for us. I really wish I could have seen the look on Sens Army's faces, on the Sens Central faces after Pacioretty went up and scored to take the lead, and then the dagger from William Nylander. It would have been priceless to see their faces and their reactions to that. Had to get that out of the way. But let's talk about the Maple Leafs fantasy angles, and then I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators and some of their fantasy value going into next season as well. And I want to throw this your way. Sure. 4 different categories that I have here for the Maple Leafs. Series MVP, a pleasant surprise in the first round series as well, the biggest disappointment, and your unsung hero. So for me first, my series MVP goes to Matthew Knies. I thought he was absolutely incredible. The fact that he's 22 years old, had 3 goals in this series. He's been Mr. Clutch in the playoffs for the last few seasons as well in Toronto. I think he had a fantastic season. Fantastic first round, and he knows exactly what to do. He goes to the front of the net. He digs in the corners. He's got a ferocious nastiness to his game as well. Now he's physical. He's strong on the puck. I think people doubt how strong he is. So for me, Matthew Knies was my MVP, series MVP in the first round. Pleasant surprise for me goes to Scott Laughton. I wasn't really sure what to think about him after the 20 games he had in the regular season, only 4 points. You know what he brings to the table, a depth centerman, a guy that gets physical. He can put his body on the line, in which he did big time in game 6 with that block, which set up Willie Nylander dagger goal. So wanted to show some love to Scott Laughton. For me, the biggest disappointment was Bobby McMann. That guy was an absolute ghost out there. He did nothing, in my opinion. And obviously I understand, the line mixture, the line scrambles, he was playing with Yarncroke, Pacioretty, Domi, Holmberg, on the bottom, in the bottom 6 on the third line, only getting 13 minutes. I thought he was very disappointing in the first round. And for me, who the unsung hero is. It's Simon Benoit, baby. I've got that jersey on pre-order. It's coming in the mail. It's coming over at some point this summer.
You have to at this point.
He was fantastic for through the first 3 games. I mean, game winner. He sets up Domi for the game winner as well in game 2. I thought he was absolutely incredible. He puts his body on the line countless times as well. Simon Benoit, for me, was the unsung hero, at least for through the first 3 games of this series. And he finished with 2 points 8 penalty minutes, 6 shots on net, 14 blocks, and 19 hits. I mean, he was just all over the ice in the defensive zone. He's great in our own zone as well with his stick checks, his hockey IQ, with with just clean, simple breakouts, and again, jumping up into the play countless times. So for me, really loved what I saw from Benoit.
And there are some fantasy takeaways to be had there because, excuse me, next season, not only does the first player you spoke about, Matthew Knies, become an immediate must draft for me.
Oh, 100%.
He's got breakout written all over it. All the dedicated fantasy heads out there have been talking about Matty Knies now for a season and a half, as for all the reasons that we've covered, a very attractive fantasy player that also covers the peripherals very well. So Matt Knies, that's a double circle for your draft preparation next season. I think you're going to get a ton of value out of him, and he has looked sensational. To me, and this isn't any fantasy takeaway, and everyone's talked about the impact of Craig Berube, but I have to say this. There is a level of accountability now on the faces of these players, and I know a lot of people be like, Flip, how can you break this down? Well, I'll tell you how. I've watched far too much Toronto Maple Leafs hockey over the past couple of seasons and over my entire life. There was a span of 6 years, Steele. I didn't miss a single game. So when I know that there is a different vibe from this team, you can trust me and take it to the bank. That David Perron goal would have melted down previous versions of this team. That's the perfect spot where this team would have withered away. And in the perfect kind of, he got horny for the poke check. Great quote. That would have burned the team in the past. And they show some backbone. They show some Craig Berube snarl, and they get it done. Appreciate the Simon Benoit love. I just got to give love to also, and, Benoit, let's be clear, even with what he's done, this is deep formats.
Deep cut.
Is waiver wire special. He's still a third line pairing, but pay attention. Holes need to be filled. Opportunities are there on good teams. I got to show some love to Brandon Carlo. Very cerebral, patient, good, reliable D-men. Just wanted to throw some love there. And the fourth line, you touched on it. There's a lot to talk about with the Ottawa Senators as well, and I'm excited to talk about that, so I don't want to get into the Leafs too much because we still have some opportunity to do that, Mr. Roden. So let's get to the Sens quick because I do want to talk about the Wild. I want to talk about the Kings and Oilers. I want to talk about the Knights and Bets. Tyler Kleven impressed me. That's another good blue liner for the Ottawa Senators, and that's when you can start to buy into this vibe that, they lost, but the come up is real in Ottawa. Let's give them the credit that they deserve and for keeping this series very close and for battling back, all of that. Tyler Kleven, really deep cut, not a ton of fantasy value, but a good D-man. Where there is a ton of fantasy value, Steele, and he has shot up the boards, in my opinion, for next year already. Jake Sanderson was unreal. And if you're talking about like MVPs or heroes for the Sens, right at the top of the list has got to be Jake Sanderson. He was really, really good and has proven he is an elite fantasy and just NHL blue liner all around.
I love the fact that you brought those two guys up because those are the two names on my list right here. First of all, Jake Sanderson, elite defenseman, definitely top 15 in the fantasy realm right now. Maybe even could be top 10. We're going to dive more into that in the offseason, but I loved what I saw from Jake Sanderson defensively. Offensively, he maybe could have done a little bit more, but the Toronto Maple Leafs did a pretty good job through the first 4 games at least to kind of keep them off to the perimeter and really affect what he does in the offensive zone. But Jake Sanderson has made a statement that he is a top defenseman in the league, and going into next year's fantasy league and fantasy draft, he's going to be one of the top defensemen taken off the board. I love the fact that you brought up Tyler Kleven because I didn't know about his game. I know about his game now. And even though offensively he's not going to jump off the page, he only had, I believe, 11 points in the regular season through 79 games. But he's the peripheral stats for this guy right here jump off the page. 78 shots, 97 blocks, 105 hits. He's only 23 years old. He's going to be one of those. Penalty minutes. He's going to be one of those deeper cuts, but if he can add some offensive flair to his game, which, who he's playing with really depends on, I think he's going to be one of those 6 defensemen, maybe even a bench player for you, especially if you're in a categorical league. This is the last thing I want to say about the Ottawa Senators, and it has nothing to do with fantasy. I just got to get this off my chest.
Please.
As much as I believe that the Ottawa Senators fan base are one of the most obnoxious and hypocritical fan base in the entire league. And I
Here we
know
go.
that they feel the exact same way about Leafs fans as well.
Of course.
I have to give a lot of credit to the Sens Army because the way that they rallied behind the team, even though they were down 3-0 in the series, even though they were down 3-2 with 7 minutes or 5 minutes left in Game 6, the way that they rallied and showed the appreciation for their franchise and their team, a lot of respect for them because, again, going back to Game 5 in Toronto, the lack of hype and rally behind the Toronto Maple Leafs when they were only down 1-0, it's embarrassing. So
yes,
as much as I don't like the Senators fan base, gotta show some mad love and respect to them for how they rally behind the team and the appreciation after the season was finally concluded. You know, obviously the players saluting them, the fans saluting them back. So I had to show some love to them as little as possible.
Brady Tkachuk, very well said, by the way, Steele. And yes, they like. Let's be honest, the atmosphere, the Leafs fan base in the building at least doesn't hold a candle to what was going on at the CTC. Shout out to the Ottawa Senators for pushing down the stretch, and their time will come. The time will come. It's not now though, and that was clear. Let's leave it at that. We got a lot more to cover after the break, and we still have to get to tonight's bets. However, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn your TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Steele's Hall of Fame #1 OG favorite, Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, gaming is made simple, all on your Fire TV. You can get hardcore gaming experiences right at your fingertips, no console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support, especially at this point in the season. Not a lot to go off fantasy-wise, but we always try to bring the fantasy angle no matter what we're talking about. And that's what we're doing with this episode, recapping the first round, especially the Game 6s that just took place, Minnesota and Vegas. As much as I was happy last night or on Thursday, for the Leafs winning their series, I was equally as upset and disappointed when the Minnesota Wild season came to an end. And I really thought that they were the better team throughout the entire series. Outside of Game 1, I really do think they took it to the Vegas Golden Knights. They easily could have won Game 4 in overtime. They should have won Game 5 if Nyquist doesn't go offside by a sliver of a hair. And even in Game 6, just again, disappointing outcome. The fact that this franchise has been in the playoffs 8 of the last 10 years and hasn't got out of the first round in all 8 postseason chances. It's disappointing. And again, that brings into what the Maple Leafs have just gone through as well, and what they may continue to go through. We don't know yet, but disappointing fantasy wise. Obviously, Kaprizov's a huge star in the league. He's going to be a top 5 draft pick going into next year. Matt Boldy, we talked about him and what his fantasy value means and brings to this team as well. It's a breakout year for him too. The one guy I wanted to highlight here was Brock Faber. And for a guy who played over 27 minutes of average ice time in this series, somehow recorded 0 points. And he had a very bad season in the regular season, a down year compared to what he did to the year previous to now. I was very shocked that there was no offensive prowl or offensive capability from Brock Faber on the back end. That makes me very concerned going into next year's fantasy draft and where to take this player. On top of that, as much as I love Bill Guerin, he has a big job and a big plate to fill in the offseason to make this team an actual Stanley Cup contending team.
Totally agree.
To add another piece, and I think he's done a fantastic job so far as the general manager, but he needs to do more to bring the hype back into Minnesota. And again, just these first round exits are horrible.
And what's intriguing to me, Steele, and you might be able to explain this to me very quickly because I do want to talk about what's going on with the Edmonton Oilers because,
Yeah.
look, the Vegas Golden Knights are built for postseason hockey. Did they perhaps enter this series as a little bit of an overhyped favorite and not giving the Minnesota Wild enough credit? Perhaps, but they are still the better team, and I don't think the Minnesota Wild need to feel ashamed at all about how this went down. This is just, to me, Marco Rossi, why did he not play? Like, I'm looking at these numbers, and I really like this kid's game. And I understand, like, there is some things for him to work on in terms of that two-way responsibility during the regular season, and I guess Joel Eriksson's injury impacted his numbers being at 18 minutes of ice time per night during the regular season. But the last 3 games, he was averaging 11 minutes or less, all the way down on the fourth line. And to me, a team that cannot afford to not have offensive flair loaded up into that top 6. And I know it doesn't necessarily fit up the middle. I guess I just would have found a way to get Marco Rossi into that lineup. And I know this isn't like the be-all, end-all of why the series didn't go their way. I was just a little bit intrigued to see Marco Rossi playing between Justin Brazeau and Yakov Trenin, taking 11 minutes of ice time per night when he went from 40 points 2 years ago to 60 this year and clearly has that offensive flair. So that's another player I got my eye on for next season because I do think Billy G has to do something this offseason and then boom, maybe there's more value here. I don't know. That was just one of the takeaways that I had. I had a question mark here on where Marco Rossi was at.
Yeah, for me, he was a little disappointing to end the regular season, and again, not a strong centerman at the faceoff circle for a centerman. I know he struggles at the dot, especially in this series. As well, on top of that, I know he's a potential trade piece. And again, maybe he's just not going to fit into what this team's future is going to be, the future plan. So maybe he is a trade piece for Bill Guerin to acquire some, maybe a more elite and steady player in the league right now, a more responsible and confident player. That's what I'm getting from this, especially with only an average of 11 minutes. But that's what I take. Again, a little bit disappointing, but I don't think the Wild have any reason to hang their heads. Obviously it's a tough way to go out, but they played great. And I thought they were the better team throughout the entire season. Again, looking at what I'm looking at from the statistics right now, Jack Eichel, -4. Hurdle, -2. Theodore, -2. -1 from Stone. -3 from Hannafin. Their top guys really weren't all that great throughout the entire series until at least game 6. A lot of negatives in that plus-minus category. And the thing that was the difference maker, again, which we've seen throughout the entire playoff so far, the face-off circle has been a big determining factor in teams winning a series, as well as the depth scoring. I think that was the nail in the coffin was the depth scoring they got from Dorofeyev or William Karlsson or Brett Howden, who had a really good series as well, kind of over what you were getting from the Wild's bottom 6.
Totally agree, and it's very intriguing that you're saying this, get it done by committee, because that's an exact reason why a lot of these teams go on to success, and that's exactly why the Edmonton Oilers were so hard for the LA Kings to deal with. Boom, segue, nailed it. The LA Kings came out like a house of fire. But we know what this Edmonton Oilers team does, and we also know what this Kings team does. They fold in the clutch. The Edmonton Oilers start slow and finish heavy, and those are the two things that played out again. However, Connor Brown, 5 points. Vasily Podkolzin, 4 points. Corey Perry, 3 points. Janmark, 3 points. All those guys that were somewhat invisible at times this regular season, and I know Podkolzin wasn't always there. However, when they are rolling those 4 lines and getting production out of the bottom 6, and you know what you're going to get from the big duo, that's a really hard thing to handle. But can this Edmonton Oilers team sustain this, Steele? Can they continue to just ride the coattails of the big two and outscore opponents 6-4, 7-4 in the postseason and not get good goaltending? I don't know what you think overall. Edmonton, credit due. The Kings wilter away once again. But I would say this Golden Knights series, anyone's for the taking, in my opinion.
It really is, and I'll give you my answer after the break. We'll wrap up this Kings-Oilers series, get to the Jets and Blues big-time bets for Friday night. But first, This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a very big challenge until Flip and I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. Here's why we love Game Time. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip, to answer your question, does the Oilers' depth scoring, continue to ride the coattails, continue to ride the backs of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid? I think the answer is yes, but from what I saw in games 5 and 6, the depth scoring really showed up. I don't even think Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid had a goal in either of those of the last 2 games. So that was a big factor as well. You got some depth scoring, and the game changed. The series changed once Calvin Pickard came in. So credit due to you for saying that if Stuart Skinner continues to struggle, Calvin Pickard's going to get a good look, and he's been rock solid for them for the most part. At least. The big factor for me, I go back to game 3. Bonehead decision or, just clueless decision from Quinton Byfield. Instead of just chipping it out of his defensive zone, he tries skating it out. He gets poke checked. They end up tying the game, and they score in the last minute and win in overtime. That was, again, kind of the TSN turning point for term. Better lack of a phrase right there.
I like it.
Kings, though, this really falls on Darcy Kemper for me.
Oh, okay.
And for me, it does. It falls on Darcy Kemper because a guy who
wasn't good
in the finalists for the Vezina Trophy, had a really good regular season, lost 4 straight games. And 3 out of those 4 losses, he allowed 4+ goals, 5 and 6 as well. So I think he was struggling, obviously, after game 3. I think the confidence level dipped. I think his confidence level in the defensive group in front of him really kind of struggled and wavered at times as well. But it falls on Darcy Kemper. This is 4 years in a row now that the Kings have lost to the Oilers in the first round in horrible fashion.
Ouch.
I don't know where they really go from here, because when you look at them as well, they got a ton of depth scoring from their guys too. Trevor Moore, 4 points. Quinton Byfield, Drew Doughty, Warren Fogle, Alex Lafreniere, Andre Kuzmenko. Adrian Kempe had 10 points in this series. He was doing everything he possibly could. And unfortunately for the Kings, they lose 4 straight times to the Oilers in the first round. So I don't really know where the Kings go from here. They might end up losing a couple guys in the offseason, depending on what happens. But the Oilers, they got Vegas now in round 2, and we're going to recap and we're going to predict all of those round 2 series on tomorrow's episode. We're starting in the Eastern Conference: Washington, Carolina, Florida, Toronto. Stay tuned for the Saturday special.
We'll go series by series, X factors, best bets, breakdowns, predictions. I got to look at Quinton Byfield quickly before we get to bets, just very quickly, because this is a player that is very, very gifted offensively. He can really skate. 3 goals, an assist, -7 though, Steele. But then you got 14 hits. You still got some block shots. To me, this is one of those high risk, high reward type draft picks next season. What do you do with them? Do you wait? Are you patient and risk missing out on a player, to me, that has 80, 90 point potential? That's how he was drafted at 2nd overall for a reason, Steele. He had 54 points this year, and that's not even scraping the surface. So I don't think 80 points is out of the question.
Might be a couple years from 80 points, though.
Could be, but it shouldn't be, in my opinion. He is now entering his year 23. He's going to be 23 this year. What I'm trying to say is, though, that's potential. And to be careful with what you do with Quinton Byfield headed into next season, because to me, he's like the tale of 2 players. One night he's dangling people out of their jock straps, highlight reel goals, changing the game. Another, he's got 4 giveaways and he just looks awful out there. So to me, he is one of those high risk, high reward draft situations. Friday, bets. Let's get it out so we can get this bad boy up there, Steele. I got a same game parlay, obviously. Quick. The Winnipeg Jets, they are the better team. Credit due to the St. Louis Blues. But I got Jets money line as my first pick. I think as much as it was a 5-3 bit of a sloppy situation the last time out between these two teams, I think it's tightened up in a big way, and that starts back in net with Connor Hellebuck. Jets on the money line. I like the under 6.5. I'm taking it up to 6.5 and taking the under. Again, 8 goals last game. Call me crazy. This one is a huge tilt, and I think it's going to be back to playoff like hockey. No running gun, no 5-3. And I really like my favorite pick of the night. Anytime point from Kyle Connor. He had a trio of points in the previous tilt. Those 3 picks together, Steele, gets you a payout of plus 210. Slap a little 25 piece on there, over double your money, and thank me later.
I love these picks, man. I love these picks because my first pick as well are the Jets on the money line here. I think this really is going to be a goalie showdown between Jordan Binnington and Connor Hellebuck.
Thank you, sir.
I don't have the under 6.5, but that's what I would go with as well in this matchup. I'm staying away from the overs and unders, but I do like the under 6.5. Put that with the Jets money line. My second and third picks from this game on Friday. Josh Morrissey, anytime point, is my second pick of the night. I think he's been relatively quiet offensively, only 2 assists, 2 points in the 5 games so far. I think he's going to have a big night offensively, whether it be on the power play 5-on-5 or shorthanded. I think he's going to be a key factor in the Jets winning this game 6. I'm also going with the Kyle Connor anytime goal as well in this matchup. He's got 4 goals in 5 games. He's without Mark Scheifele. He's out for this game 6, so let's keep that in mind as well. So a lot of the offensive baggage is going to be on his shoulders. Gabriel Velarde's back in the lineup. I think
Ehlers back in, by the way.
I believe Nikolai Ehlers is back in the lineup as well. So even with Scheifele out, you get some key guys back in the lineup. And I think Kyle Connor, I mean, even if you want to go with the 4+ shot player prop as well, I like that too. But Kyle Connor, anytime goal. Josh Morrissey, anytime point. And the Jets on the money line. That is my lock of the night.
Let's get it, my friend. And I'm excited for tomorrow's Saturday Special.
Saturday Special, again, breaking down round 2 of the Eastern Conference final 4 teams right now. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen. For your second listen, you got to go check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, your favorite teams in the playoffs, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Better luck next year, Ottawa.